The search dogs refused to go any further. It was March 2012, deep in the Clearwater National Forest of northern Idaho, and a team of rescue volunteers stood in a clearing that shouldn't exist. The pines around them were skeletal, their bark stripped in vertical gouges as if something had clawed its way skyward. At the center of the clearing sat a canvas tent, its fabric bleached gray by months of sun and snow, the entrance flap hanging open like a silent scream. Inside, they found a camp frozen in time. A hunting rifle leaned against a folding chair. A Coleman lantern sat on a wooden crate, its glass chimney still intact. A tin cup rested beside a cold fire pit, half filled with water that had turned to ice and thawed again, over and over. But there was no hunter, no body, no blood, just a leather journal lying open on the tent floor. Its pages warped by moisture, the final entry dated November 18th, 2011, 4 months earlier. The last line, written in hurried script, read, "It's circling the camp now. I can hear it breathing." What happened to Marcus Holt, a 34-year-old bow hunter from Coeur d'Alene, became one of Idaho's most disturbing missing persons cases. Not because of what investigators found, but because of what they didn't. No tracks led away from the camp. No signs of struggle, no animal predation, just an empty tent in a forest that had somehow changed around it, as if the wilderness itself had swallowed him whole and then waited patiently to be discovered. This is the story of how a routine hunting trip became a descent into something far stranger. If you're drawn to mysteries that blur the line between the explicable and the impossible, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment below telling us, would you spend a night alone in those woods? Now, let's rewind to where this all began, to a crisp autumn morning when Marcus Holt kissed his wife goodbye and drove north toward the mountains, expecting to return in 5 days with stories and venison. He would never be seen again. Marcus Holt had been planning this hunt for 11 months. He'd marked the dates on the kitchen calendar in August, circled in red, November 13, 2011. Elk season in the Clearwater. His wife, Jennifer, had learned to recognize the shift in him every autumn, the way he'd spend evenings studying topographic maps, tracing ridgelines with his finger, murmuring about game trails and wind direction. This wasn't escapism for Marcus. It was ritual, a way of reconnecting with something primal that his job as a civil engineer couldn't satisfy. On the morning of November 13th, he loaded his truck with practiced efficiency, a recurved bow and a quiver of broadheads, a weatherproof tent rated for alpine conditions, enough freeze-dried meals and water purification tablets for a week, plus emergency rations, a satellite phone, fully charged, a first aid kit, a topographic GPS unit. Marcus was methodical to the point of obsession. Jennifer used to joke that he could survive a nuclear winter with a Boy Scout handbook and a roll of duct tape. 5 days, she said, standing in the driveway as dawn broke over the suburbs of Coeur d'Alene. Not 6. You promised. 5 days, Marcus repeated, kissing her forehead. I'll call you from the trailhead when I get there, and again when I'm heading back down. He did call. At 9:47 a.m., Jennifer's phone buzzed with his voice, crackling slightly over the satellite connection. Made it to the Kelly Creek trailhead. Weather's perfect. Heading in now. Love you. The call lasted 18 seconds. It was the last time anyone heard from him. Marcus's plan was straightforward. He'd hike 6 miles into a remote section of the forest, a region he'd scouted during the summer, and set up camp near a natural spring. Elk migrated through the area in November, following ancient routes between high summer pastures and lower winter grounds. He'd spend his days tracking, his evenings by the fire, and his nights listening to the forest breathe. Then, on November 17th, he'd pack up and hike out. But November 17th came and went. No truck appeared in the driveway, no phone call. By the evening of November 18th, Jennifer contacted the Clearwater County Sheriff's Office. By November 19th, a search and rescue operation was underway. They found his truck exactly where it should be, parked at the Kelly Creek trailhead, locked and undisturbed. Inside, his wallet sat in the cup holder. A duffel bag of extra clothing lay in the back seat. Nothing was missing. It was as if he'd simply stepped into the woods and ceased to exist. The search teams deployed quickly. Local volunteers, Forest Service rangers, and a K-9 unit trained for wilderness recovery. They followed the Kelly Creek Trail, calling Marcus's name, scanning for boot prints, broken branches, any sign of passage. But the forest was vast, and early snowfall had already begun to obscure the ground. After 5 days, they found nothing. After 10 days, the official search was scaled back. After 3 weeks, it was suspended entirely. Winter closed over the Clearwater like a fist, and Marcus Holt became another name on a list of people who'd walked into the American wilderness and vanished. Jennifer Holt didn't accept silence as an answer. Through December and January, she called the sheriff's office weekly, then daily. She posted on missing persons forums. She hired a private investigator who specialized in wilderness recovery. She studied Marcus's maps, trying to reverse engineer his route, his thinking. Where would he have camped? What landmarks would he have used? The investigator, a retired park ranger named David Kowalski, agreed to wait until spring and then conduct a private search. "The snow's too deep right now," Kowalski told her in February. "But when the melt starts, we'll go back in. Sometimes the thaw reveals things." March arrived with unseasonable warmth. By mid-month, the snowpack in the Clearwater was receding faster than normal, exposing trails and clearings that had been buried for months. On March 21st, Kowalski assembled a small team, 4 volunteers, 2 search dogs, and Jennifer herself. They entered the forest at dawn, following the same trail Marcus had taken. The hike was brutal. 6 miles through uneven terrain, the ground still muddy and treacherous from snowmelt. But Kowalski had a theory. Based on the topographic maps Marcus had annotated, he believed the camp would be located near a spring-fed creek, roughly 2 miles northeast of the main trail. They bushwhacked through dense undergrowth, the dogs pulling hard on their leads, noses low. And then, just after noon, the forest changed. It was subtle at first, a thinning of the canopy, a strange absence of bird song. Then they stepped into the clearing, and every member of the team stopped. The dogs whined and refused to advance. One of them, a German shepherd named Ranger, sat abruptly and began pawing at his own face, a stress behavior Kowalski had never seen him exhibit. The clearing was roughly 40 feet in diameter, ringed by pines that looked wrong. Their bark had been stripped in vertical lines from ground level to about 8 feet high, exposing pale wood underneath. The ground was bare, no undergrowth, no moss, just hard-packed earth. At the center sat Marcus's tent, still standing, its guy lines taut, as if he'd just set it up yesterday. Jennifer ran toward it. Kowalski shouted for her to wait, but she was already pulling back the entrance flap. Inside, everything was arranged with Marcus's signature precision. The sleeping bag was rolled neatly. The camp stove sat disassembled in its case. The rifle leaned against the chair, unfired. But Marcus was gone. What Jennifer found instead was the journal, a leather-bound field notebook Marcus always carried lying open on the tent floor. She picked it up with trembling hands and began to read. The journal entries began normally enough. November 13th, 2011. Evening. Made camp by 3 p.m. Perfect spot. Spring is clean. Site is level. Good visibility. Saw elk scat on the way in. Fresh. Should be a good week. Weather holding. Temp around 40 degrees. Clear skies. November 14th. Morning. Up at dawn. Moved east along the ridge. Found a game trail. Lots of tracks. No shot opportunities yet, but that's fine. It's about the patience. Saw a bull at distance. Too far for bow range. He'll circle back. Returned to camp by 4 p.m. Heard wolves howling after dark. Far off. Normal. The entries were pragmatic. Technical. Exactly what you'd expect from someone like Marcus. But on November 15th, the tone shifted. November 15th. Evening. Something knocked over my water jug last night. Didn't hear it happen. Thought maybe a raccoon or a fox, but there are no tracks. None at all. Checked the perimeter this morning. Ground soft enough that I should see prints if anything came through. Nothing. Probably just rolled on its own. Need to place things more carefully. November 16th, afternoon. The forest is too quiet. Haven't heard birds since yesterday. No wind either, which is strange. There's always wind up here. Saw movement in the trees this morning while I was tracking. Large. Thought it was the elk. But when I got closer, there was nothing. No tracks, no scat, no broken branches. I'm good at tracking. I don't miss signs. But there's nothing there. That entry was where Jennifer's hands began to shake. November 16th. Night, can't sleep. Something woke me around 2 a.m., a sound like breathing. Heavy and wet, right outside the tent. I grabbed the rifle and called out. No response. Waited for 10 minutes. Listening, then it moved. I heard it circling, slowly, just beyond the firelight. I fired a shot into the air. The sound stopped. But I don't think it left. I can feel it watching. Kowalski, reading over Jennifer's shoulder, said quietly, "Could have been a bear." But Jennifer was already turning the page. November 17th, morning. Tried to leave at first light. The trail's gone. I don't mean I can't find it. I mean it's not there anymore. The trees have moved. I know how that sounds. But the landmarks I used on the way in aren't where they should be. The ridge is in the wrong place. The spring is running in a different direction. I've used a compass my entire life. I know how to navigate. This doesn't make sense. I'm going to try heading due west. That should take me back to the main trail. November 17th, afternoon. I ended up back at camp. I walked for 3 hours in a straight line, kept the sun on my left the entire time, never deviated. But somehow I'm back here. This isn't possible. I'm not disoriented. I'm not panicking. Something is wrong with this place. November 18th. Morning. It came into the clearing last night. I saw it. Or I saw the shape of it. Tall, hunched, moving between the trees. It didn't come close, but it didn't leave either. I fired twice, missed, or it didn't care. I'm keeping the rifle loaded. I tried the sat phone. No signal. There's always signal up here. I checked the GPS. It says I'm 200 miles south of where I should be. That's not right. And then, the final entry. The one that made Jennifer's breath catch. November 18th, evening. It's circling the camp now. I can hear it breathing. After that, nothing. Blank pages. The journal ended mid-sentence. Mid-terror, as if Marcus had simply put down the pen and walked out into the dark. Kowalski immediately called for a forensics team. Within hours, Clearwater County investigators were combing through the camp, photographing everything, bagging evidence. What they found defied easy explanation. The tent showed no signs of forced entry. The rifle was fully loaded. Marcus had never fired the shots he claimed to have taken in the journal because all his ammunition was accounted for. The satellite phone was there, functional, fully charged. When they powered it on, it showed full signal strength. The GPS unit told a different story. Its last recorded position placed Marcus exactly where he should be. Kelly Creek Drainage, Clearwater National Forest. No anomaly. No 200-mile discrepancy. Just accurate coordinates, time-stamped November 13th, the day he'd arrived. He was disoriented, one investigator suggested. Hypoxia, maybe. Or early hypothermia. It can cause confusion, paranoia. But the evidence didn't support that. Marcus had food, water, and proper gear. The temperatures in mid-November weren't extreme, and hypothermia didn't explain the journal's lucid, methodical entries right up until the moment they stopped. Then there were the trees. A Forest Service botanist was brought in to examine the stripped bark. His report was clinical, but unsettling. The damage wasn't consistent with any known animal behavior. Bears strip bark to feed on cambium, but they do it in ragged patches. Elk rub antlers vertically, but leave shallower marks. This was different. Deep, parallel gouges, perfectly vertical, as if something had systematically clawed each tree in the clearing. Could be territorial marking, the botanist offered. But I've never seen anything like it. The search expanded. Cadaver dogs were brought in, trained to detect human remains. They circled the clearing, noses low, but alerted on nothing. Infrared drones swept the surrounding forest. Ground teams walked grid patterns for miles in every direction. They found no body, no clothing, no additional signs of Marcus. What they did find, 3 days into the expanded search, was another anomaly. About a half-mile northwest of the camp, a volunteer discovered a tree that didn't belong. It was a Douglas fir, massive and ancient, its trunk nearly 6 feet in diameter. But according to Forest Service records and historical surveys, no tree of that size existed in that location. The maps showed a young stand of lodgepole pine. The volunteer radioed it in, and when investigators arrived with historical photographs, the discrepancy became undeniable. The tree was there. It shouldn't be, but it was. Maps get updated, someone said. Surveys miss things. Except this tree was old growth, hundreds of years old. You don't miss a tree like that. And when a dendrochronologist examined core samples, the rings suggested it had been there for at least 4 centuries. But a 1970s aerial survey showed nothing of the sort. Jennifer, watching the investigators argue, said quietly, "He wrote that the trees moved, that the landmarks were wrong." No one responded, because there was no rational response. Trees don't move. Forests don't rearrange themselves, but Marcus's journal said they had, and now there was a tree that shouldn't exist, standing exactly where Marcus would have walked if he'd tried to leave the clearing. The case fragmented into theories, none of them satisfying. The official conclusion, released in May 2012, was pragmatic. Marcus Holt had become disoriented, possibly due to a medical event, and succumbed to exposure. His remains were likely scattered by scavengers or buried under debris. The journal was evidence of psychological distress, not supernatural phenomena. The investigation was closed, with the caveat that it could be reopened if new evidence emerged. But privately, people who'd been in that clearing told different stories. Kowalski, the private investigator, refused to take cases in the Clearwater after that. "I've been in the wilderness for 30 years, he told a local reporter off the record. "I know what a normal forest feels like. That place felt wrong, like it was tolerating us." One of the search volunteers, a woman named Angela Petrie, described waking up in her tent during the expanded search and hearing something large moving through the camp. "Everyone else was asleep," she said. "I looked out through the mesh and saw a shape, tall, dark, hunched. It wasn't a bear. It moved wrong. Too deliberate. I didn't scream. I just closed my eyes and waited for it to leave. In the morning, there were no tracks." The Forest Service quietly closed the Kelly Creek area to overnight camping, citing wildlife management concerns. No further explanation was provided. Jennifer took the journal home. She read it dozens of times, searching for clues, inconsistencies, anything that might explain what happened. She focused on the November 18th entry, the last one, the one about circling and breathing. Marcus had written that it was circling the camp. Not approaching, circling, as if testing him, as if waiting. She hired a linguist to analyze the handwriting. The expert confirmed it was Marcus's script throughout, with no signs of forgery. But the pressure of the pen changed in the final entries, heavier, more erratic, as if he'd been writing quickly or under stress. "What do you think happened to him?" Jennifer asked the linguist. The woman hesitated. "I think he believed what he wrote. Whether it was real or not, he believed it." In June 2012, Jennifer returned to the clearing one last time, alone. She didn't tell anyone she was going. She parked at the Kelly Creek trailhead, hiked the 6 miles in, and stood at the edge of the bare earth where Marcus's tent had been. The Forest Service had dismantled the camp, but the stripped trees remained pale and skeletal. She called his name. Once, twice. The forest absorbed the sound without echo. She waited for an hour, sitting on the cold ground, listening. Nothing answered. But as the sun dipped low and shadows pooled between the pines, she felt it. A presence, patient and vast, watching from just beyond sight. She left before dark. She never went back. Marcus Holt was never found. No remains, no clothing, no evidence of violence or predation. The case remains officially open, but inactive, one of hundreds of unsolved disappearances in America's wilderness areas. The journal is stored in an evidence locker in Lewiston, Idaho, its pages slowly yellowing, waiting for someone to make sense of them. But the forest remembers. Hunters who venture into the Kelly Creek drainage report unease, a feeling of being followed by something that never quite shows itself. Trail cameras installed after Marcus's disappearance occasionally capture strange anomalies, blurred shapes moving between frames, too large to be deer, too bipedal to be bears. The Forest Service attributes these to equipment malfunction or misidentification. In 2014, a geology student conducting soil surveys discovered something else. The clearing where Marcus camped sits atop a geomagnetic anomaly, an area where the Earth's magnetic field deviates significantly from normal. Compasses spin, GPS units glitch. The student published a paper suggesting the anomaly might explain Marcus's disorientation, his claims of navigational failure, but it doesn't explain the breathing. It doesn't explain the circling. It doesn't explain why a man with survival training, proper equipment, and a loaded rifle simply vanished from a standing camp without a trace. Jennifer Holt remarried in 2016. She rarely speaks about Marcus publicly, but in a 2018 interview with a wilderness safety podcast, she said something haunting. "I think the forest took him, not in a metaphor, literally. I think there are places in this world that belong to something older than us, and Marcus walked into one. He was careful, smart, prepared, but none of that mattered. Some doors, once you step through, don't let you back out." The Clearwater National Forest spans 1.8 million acres. Every year, people hike its trails, camp in its clearings, hunt its game. Most return home safely, but every year, a handful don't. Some fall, some get lost. Some, like Marcus, simply cease to exist, leaving behind only questions and the eerie certainty that they were not alone in the dark. The last line of Marcus's journal has never been explained. "It's circling the camp now. I can hear it breathing. No animal breathes like that. Loud enough to hear over canvas walls, wet enough to sound wrong. No predator circles endlessly without attacking. But something did, and whatever it was, it's still out there, patient and ancient. Waiting for the next person who wanders too deep, stays too long, and hears the breathing start just beyond the firelight. The woods of Idaho keep their secrets well, and some secrets are meant to stay buried, not in the earth, but in the silence between the trees, where the maps don't quite match, and the trails lead only in circles, and the last thing you hear before the dark takes you is something vast and unknowable, drawing one slow, wet breath after another." If you're ever hunting alone in the wilderness and the birds stop singing, leave. Don't wait to see why. Just leave. Because some things that live in the forest were never meant to be found.